Well, first, I want you all to know in the audience while you're copiously taking notes that the real excitement begins when you start asking questions. And as David said at the beginning, we really hope that this time can be amongst fellow artists, that we can be honest about what we need to know, what we want to know, what we're worried about, what we're thinking about. And too often, opportunities like this for all of us to learn go by because we're trying to be too cool, trying to be hip. We have no problems. I just was free at this time, so I thought I'd show up. Please leave that at the door, and hopefully we can all learn from each other. My path has been very interesting, and I must say this opportunity to focus on entrepreneurship and innovation and creativity is wonderful, but strange for me because I don't think about it. I don't think any of us here label ourselves as, my card doesn't say I'm an entrepreneur. It says I'm a trumpet player, and I run an organization. Couple of quick things broadly about entrepreneurship that I think about, and then some specific examples of failures, and hopefully moving from failures closer to success. Broadly, I think of the term entrepreneur as someone who is open to ideas which can inspire them to focus, to show commitment in bringing those ideas to fruition. And for me, as a student in school at conservatories, as a trumpet player, that openness to ideas had to first take the form of me being open to my background and myself, musically and as a person, which includes not only studying orchestral music and the Brandenburg and all of these pieces, but also realizing that I come from a musically rich environment, which I had discounted until my senior year at the Juilliard School, where I was asked to participate in a concert, and someone said, well, we have 5 more minutes. Maybe we can do another piece. And I said, well, you know what, there are these spirituals my mom used to always sing. I'll just write something up for the brass quintet, and I'll do an arrangement or something, just take 5 minutes. So I wrote up this arrangement and brought it into the group, and they were all floored by it. And they said, this is amazing, you got to write more. And I had discounted any of that stuff. Well, I just grew up with that, and spirituals, and I combined all the jazz stuff. That's easy. Let's get to the Etler. It's hard. Let's practice that. And again, that openness to an idea, then that idea in that case was homegrown. To say, well, gee, why don't you just mine this treasure that you can do this easily? Don't discount what comes easy. And it is now, we've written some arrangements for piano and trumpet, and they are on all the recitals I do around the country as an integral part of them. And was, going back even further, a tribute to my mother who sang in our church, and I remember taking lessons, and I would go after church to the piano and start to play these jazz chords that I heard on Miles Davis or Bill Evans play, and she would run over and say, stop doing that, you're in church. Be playing that jazz music in church? And of course I would turn to her and say, well, wait a minute, you're paying for these lessons to learn music. Why don't you want me to play music? And she eventually went, you know what, I don't know why I did that. You're right, it's music. And so a lot of these arrangements that I do are really in tribute to her openness, to see past her upbringing, to say this is just music. And so in a personal way, those are ways I honor her. Professionally, they become incredibly interesting differentiators for me as a solo trumpet player in the marketplace. Because people go, wow, he doesn't just play the Brandenburg Concerto and Haydn and Hummel and all that stuff. He also does this. And I ended up writing for orchestras and different arrangements for things because people had heard those little tiny spirituals, which I discounted. And that exemplifies kind of the backwardness of entrepreneurship. You're not always, as we talked about earlier at the break, you're not always thinking, I'm going to build, like we heard last night, I'm going to build Ben & Jerry's, and it'll be a conglomerate, and it will be this. And no, you're just kind of stumbling along and falling into things. But again, the key is being focused and committed and disciplined about it. I still go back to some of these arrangements. I don't know why I'm stuck on these arrangements. But anyway, I go back to these arrangements, and I still like to play them. I still marvel at stuff in them because I took time when I wrote them to put all that I knew at that time into them. I was focused and persistent. in that endeavor. So as an individual artist, as an example, that openness to yourself, to all of yourself, is a key thing. If you can't be open to what idea is inborn in you, how can you be open to an idea that you're going to come across in a class? So I think if you want to develop that muscle of being open, you can do it now. Think about what piece you want to play, and how can you make it happen? Another example is I started a brass orchestra called the American Brass Orchestra, and I really started it for one reason, because I wanted to play a piece. Saxa Concertino, I heard it, and I said, man, I want to play that, but it requires like 15 brass players. How am I going to get 15 brass players to play this piece? A lot with me. So I put together a group and worked with Carnegie Hall. They hired us to do these in-school concerts, and then the Philharmonic hired us to do these in-school concerts, and I had taken one conducting course in Michigan, so I said, well, I might as well get my money's worth out of it, and I'll conduct this group, and I called my friends and put stuff together and found pieces they wanted to play, and people said, hey, could we do this piece? I heard it in Sweden. So, yeah, bring that piece, we'll do that piece. And at the end of the day, we had a whole series we did for 4 seasons of these concerts, and I only wanted to do it for one piece. Of course, we did that piece every concert, because that's what I wanted to play. But, looking for examples of entrepreneurship, I didn't really think I'm going to be a founder, conductor of the blah, blah. I'm not as hip as Claire is. I just wanted to play a piece. So, how you fall into that, how persistent you are to make things happen is great. And I promised I would share one that wasn't always so successful. From an organizational standpoint, I run a community school of the arts that serves 3,000 students and owns 60,000 square feet. It's like a business. And one day, I went to speak at some church, and the next day, this gentleman drove over these 2 rappers from the community, 2 gentlemen who were in the housing projects and who were interested in getting a room to do an A&R workshop that they do with young people. I said, well, tell me more about this A&R workshop. What do you do? Well, we're community activists, and we're interested in youth development, and we work with the inner city kids, and we want to, can we have a room? Because no one will give us a room to do this. I said, well, let's have lunch. Tell me more, where you're coming from. Well, we rap, and I used to be all of this stuff. I said, well, we're going to start an academy here for hip-hop, because you're expressing a need in the community, and I get to control the place, and it's a conservatory, and it'll add this tradition to you. And they're like, well, we just wanted a room. I said, well, I think if you think bigger than that, we can help more kids. So we're in our 3rd year of an academy which has gotten Rockefeller Foundation support, has 3 CDs out and clips on YouTube, and it is, from the outside, that's my boiler speech, I would say, in the elevator. It's a success. Let me take you inside. Inside, I explicated the difference in vision. They wanted a room. I saw a whole academy and an inclusion of a expressive art form. We had problems because of that. We also had problems because I was an institution and they're community-based. So there was issues of ownership and issues of quality instruction. They were bringing in some dubious characters into the building to work with these kids, and there was no parental consent form. We had to add structure. They wanted freedom. So that lovely idea didn't pan out as perfectly as I would have liked, and I ended up having to break relationships with one of the directors over those types of issues. And it was quite demoralizing, because all the while my board and others were saying, wow, we have a hip-hop academy, Aaron has brought this, we got Rockefeller money, wow, what a success. And I'm thinking, no, this is not good. This is a failure. We didn't connect well enough, just like I'm sure you experience in chamber groups. People you work with, you want to do this, but it didn't really feel that good. You thought it would feel better, but people didn't get along. And the real question, which I'm dealing with right now, because this program is still going on, we're taking our school 180 students to Carnegie Hall in 3 weeks, including this hip-hop project. 2 weeks ago, we had no students signed up for this hip-hop project. 0. Everybody else was signed up, and my staff kept saying, well, do you want to keep this hip-hop thing on the schedule? We got to get the program off to Carnegie. You don't have anybody. And that's an administrative issue where I said, well, look, I'm committed to the vision of including this music with jazz and opera and all the other things we do. We're going to keep it on the program. And I spent weekends driving around trying to find kids to take part of this. And I got a call last night after I got back from practicing at midnight in the practice room here. Someone had left a message and said, we got 5 kids to sign up. And to me, that's great, but it shows how you have to be persistent. There's nobody on sign up for it. I don't know how they're going to do. We're going to have to coach them, but the idea is important enough to keep alive, to me. But the point in that story is that entrepreneurship is not so glamorous. We're not always wearing suits and ties and nice water, and it's dirty. And you just got to be persistent. And if you want to do it, you're going to do it.